This is part 3 of an 8-part series in which I recommend movies to people who enjoyed The Batman, which I didn't like. If you enjoyed it, you might enjoy these. They share some of the same traits in terms of content, theme, and tone, and they're movies that have shaped my idea of what good movie storytelling is. Watch parts 1 and 2 of this series if you haven't already. In those videos, I recommend the movies Prisoners and Good Time and discuss, among other things, the fantastic performances given by Paul Dano and Robert Pattinson. Today I'm discussing Insomnia. This is a recommendation, not a thorough review. My thoughts here won't be comprehensive. I always say that I won't get into major spoilers, and I still think that's the case here, but for this particular movie I should point out that I am going to cover something that some people might consider to be a bigger spoiler than I do. It's impossible to talk about one of the best and most important aspects of the movie otherwise. I'll be delicate about what I say, and I wouldn't include it here at all if I thought it gave away too much, but just in case, I'll give another warning immediately before that part of the video, so you can watch at least up to that point without fear. And, as always, if you prefer to go into a story without knowing anything at all, this is your warning. A few of the people who were upset by the fact that a stranger on the internet didn't like a Batman movie they liked accused me of being a biased Nolan fanboy. I wouldn't consider myself a fanboy of anything, but sure, I do really like those movies. I have my issues with them, but they're pretty minor. But when I think of Christopher Nolan, the first movie that comes to my mind isn't Batman. It's actually Interstellar. It's my favorite of his. I saw it 3 times in theaters, and I've watched it more since then. It was a big enough deal when it came out that everyone knows about it by now, and everyone has their opinions on it. But another, older gem by Nolan that I rarely hear mentioned is 2002's Insomnia, a remake of the 1997 Norwegian movie by the same title. It's my second favorite Nolan movie, very close behind Interstellar, and in many ways I think it's probably better. At the very least, I think that Insomnia's lack of space travel and metaphysics means that more people can probably appreciate it. It's a little more accessible, and it deserves to be seen and discussed a lot more than it is. Two LA homicide detectives, played by Al Pacino and Martin Donovan, go to a small town in Alaska to investigate the murder of a local teen girl. They're there during Alaska's annual period of long daylight, and Pacino's character, Detective Will Dormer, struggles to get any sleep. While on the case, sleep deprivation and a variety of other factors related to the unfamiliar environment cause him to make a horrible mistake that, if exposed, would not only cost him his freedom but also undo most of the work that he's done throughout his entire career. So for the rest of the movie, he works to cover up this mistake while simultaneously grappling with the case, all while his lack of sleep and the diminishing clarity of his thinking make the entire ordeal increasingly difficult for him to deal with. The first thing to point out is that the movie is visually beautiful, with a lot of soft light, fog, and all the whites and grays and greens of the Alaskan countryside. For anyone who loves hiking or simply enjoys gorgeous views of nature, this region is a treat for the eyes, enhancing the tone and mood of the movie. And besides all that, it's a significant plot element in itself. I've heard several people mention that they loved how, in The Batman, Bruce kept a journal of his nightly activities because all the days bled together for him, and that was a nice detail. The endless daylight and insomnia stretching on as the days literally flow together for the sleepless Dormer isn't exactly the same concept, but it's similar, and it's brilliantly executed. The acting is solid across the board. I really enjoyed Hilary Swank as Ellie Burr, a young police officer who idolizes Detective Dormer and unwittingly becomes a thorn in his side as the strides she makes in solving the murder start to come too close to revealing the mistake he's trying to cover up. Nicky Katt plays Fred Duger, a straight-laced cop who obviously isn't happy to be working with Dormer. There's some good, understated tension between the two that shows off what a great detective Dormer is early on, when he's confident and on top of things and always a step ahead, but later serves to pile on more pressure as a sleep-deprived and increasingly paranoid Dormer grasps for the next safe move to make. And then there's Maura Tierney, who makes a significant impression during the handful of scenes she's in. Her small role is one of the things I've always remembered most about Insomnia. The bit of focus she gets throughout pays off in her eventually grounding and helping to sell an important scene that really nails down the theme of the story. She conveys so much depth of character with just her face by the way she watches and listens. And here's where I double down on the warning I gave earlier in the video. We've arrived at an aspect of the movie that I can't talk about in any meaningful way without getting into details that some might consider a spoiler. And now that we're here, I am going to talk about it. I personally don't think it's meant to be a big reveal. The possible solution to the case that it rules out is one I don't think audiences were ever meant to seriously consider. If anything, the casting choice I'm about to discuss feels more like a spoiler, to the point that if you don't know about it already, I'd recommend closing your eyes as soon as you see Al Pacino's name appear during the opening credits. I can only imagine the jolting surprise you'd get when this character shows up. I might be overselling it, but better safe than sorry. Pause the video now and go watch Insomnia if you're concerned. I mean it. Here we go. To me, the best performance in Insomnia, without question, is given by the late, great, magnificent Robin Williams. Williams was my favorite actor, and even though he's primarily known for being funny, I've always thought that he was far better in dramatic roles than he was in comedy. This is a perfect example. No one but Robin could have brought such genuine warmth and earnest humanity to a character nonetheless so lost, so horrifying, so beyond redemption. In my review of The Batman, I criticized Paul Dano's Riddler as over the top to the point of being goofy, a portrayal of a crazy killer whose insanity is far too obvious and on the nose and handholdy. And I blamed that not on Dano, but on the script and direction. If you'd like to see madness done subtly and infinitely more unsettlingly, look no further than the tortured character of Walter Finch. Tortured is the word to use here. Finch is a schemer, and he spins quite a web for Detective Dormer, but he's no mastermind. He's barely even malicious. Robin Williams' Finch is miserable, tired, and scared, desperate to escape from the situation he's put himself in, but displaying little hope. You can see it in his eyes and in the set of his jaw. You can hear it in his voice. He'd be resentful, but he's too ashamed. He'd be remorseful, but he's too shocked and terrified by what he did. Pain, regret, and desperation bleed together and gush from every frame he's in. I don't want to give too much more away. This movie is an underappreciated treasure from the days before Batman made Christopher Nolan really famous, and it's one everyone should see. The rare dynamic between Dormer and Finch, the emphasis placed on the supreme importance of seemingly small things, and some fantastic symbolism involving Alaska's relentless sunlight that I could happily spend a lot longer talking about than I'm going to here, all work together to tell a powerful story about owning up to the things we've done and the lasting, constant effect guilt has on our lives. As you might guess, the movie's title has multiple meanings. And now, for something less serious, I present to you my very first YouTube segue. Speaking of titles, Christopher Nolan has directed 3 movies whose titles each consist of one word that starts with the letters I and N: Insomnia, Inception, and Interstellar. I'm not going anywhere with that, I just noticed it and wanted to point it out. Single people, be sure to blurt out that little tidbit on your next first date. One more pointless side note. Al Pacino's character in Insomnia is named Will Dormer, and when Robin Williams talks to him, he frequently directly addresses him as Will.
Motivations are everything, Will.
Hearing these lines delivered this way with Robin Williams' voice makes me feel like I'm watching Good Will Hunting, my favorite movie.
You feel like you're alone, Will? Oh, I got regrets, Will, because I don't see a lot of honor in that, Will.
I just wanted to mention that because I can't help but think about it every time I watch Insomnia. And now for my second YouTube segue, Bear Witness. And speaking of Good Will Hunting, did you like the accents in The Batman?
You protecting this guy, Jim? He interfered in an active hostage situation.
Do you want to hear more accents?
What's going on here?
Do you want to hear some that are real?
I will go ahead. Thanks a lot. Guess I have the floor now.
Watch Good Will Hunting.
This is a Hobbit bar, huh?
Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, and Casey Affleck grew up together in the Boston area, and they speak with real Boston accents in the movie.
My boy's wicked smart.
A lot of the rest of the cast are actual Bostonian tribesmen with authentic Boston accents as well. Minnie Driver was born in London, and her British accent is real too. If you liked the goofy off-brand NYPD cops played by Scottish and British actors running around the Gotham City Police Department quacking like weird ducks in The Batman,
Hey! What's the matter with you? This isn't the way to do this!
you'll love The Real Thing even more.
Yeah, what can I do for you?
This is Professor Lambeau.
This is Professor Hayes.
I kid. Good Will Hunting is my favorite movie, and it'll probably get its own video someday, but it's not a serious entry on this list. If you're still here, thanks for indulging me.
Are you like me now?
Here's my actual next recommendation. If you like the accents in the Batman, you'll love hearing real ones in Mystic River. Three boys, Sean, Dave, and Jimmy, play hockey on a street in Boston when an unfamiliar car rolls up.